Welcome back after the break. So we're basically discussing why farming is so important as a primary activity in South Africa and what promotes farming in South Africa. And we look at the first point and we looked at it, it's quite profitable and it's high in demand. It means people need it. So if we look at our second point, the eastern half of our country receives more than 500 millimeters of rain. Now, let's just quickly revise a bit. Why the eastern half of Southern Africa? Why? Because our rainfall increases from west to east. Why? Because of the warm Mozambique current on the east coast of Southern Africa, and that creates summer rainfall for the eastern half of Southern Africa. Now, obviously, for green pastures and for crop farming, water is a very important necessity. Not only the rain itself, but obviously storage dams for irrigation to be able to water our crops and to make the crops grow. In the case of cattle farming, stock farming, we need it for green pastures. And therefore, now keep in mind, if there's green pastures, it means we can farm more cattle, and very importantly, obviously our farming methods needs to be correct as well. We don't want to over-cultivate, and if we can farm more, we can therefore sell more products, sell more food, and increase the profits. Now for the crop farming, now South Africa is quite a warm place. If you look at our climate, we experience quite high temperatures, summer temperatures. Now when do we receive most of our rainfall? Also during the summer. Now this helps the crop to grow, and obviously it increases the crop production. Now very importantly over here, you need to keep in mind, crop production, not only do we feed ourselves and the population of South Africa, but if we have an excess, what can we do with it? We can sell it, we can export it, and even make more money. The same with stock farming. More rainfall, high temperatures makes greener pastures. And then another reason it promotes farming in South Africa is the availability of labours. Now when we look at the concepts, we look at semi-skilled, skilled and unskilled labours. Now I won't say it's a good thing to have many unskilled people, but the thing is, it means there will be less unemployment. So we have enough people to basically provide jobs and be workers. Now you can be semi-skilled, unskilled or skilled to practice this farming methods. Now unfortunately, we look at what promotes farming in South Africa, we've got some problems as well. And what restricts us, limits us in farming in South Africa? Why can't we make more money? Why can't we be more profitable? Why can't we export more? Now these factors makes farming difficult, and it makes it less productive and less profitable. It means we're not making any money. Now unfortunately, if you look at South Africa, the eastern half do receive high rainfall, about 500 millimeters of rain per year, but in generally our rainfall is low. Now the reason why our rainfall is low is because we are situated over the subtropical high pressure belt. If you can remember from the previous episodes, South Africa's climate is dominated by the high pressure belt, the South Atlantic, Kalahari High, and the South Indian high pressure system. Now obviously it's sinking air, so we need rising air for the forming of precipitation. Now unfortunately it's unreliable in the plateau, which limits the crop production and decreases the availability of pastures for stock farming. Now in recent years we've seen it, especially in 2016 and 2015, we did experience a drought. Western Cape still experienced a drought. Now this is going to have a major effect on the farming areas. You need to keep this in mind. Now all of a sudden there's not enough rainfall, so not much grapes can be produced and harvested. So that means we can't export the wine. Now this got a chain reaction on the employees. If there's not much crops to yield, it means you don't need that much workers. So it might lead to people getting unemployed, leads to unemployment. Another major concern is soil erosion. Now, we've seen this happening in South Africa because of incorrect farming methods. Now, overcultivation, if the cattle, we leave the cattle unsupervised, and what basically happens, no soil, no grass pastures are left, and it leads to soil erosion. So what happens? Topsoil are being removed by wind or water, and it makes the soil infertile. And once again, if there's not enough fertile soil, it means there's going to be decreasing profits because there's not going to be enough cattle. Now, like I've mentioned, droughts and floods and hailstorms, believe it or not, hailstorms can do massive damage to crop farming because it can destroy the crops. But like I explained to you, the droughts can be a major concern. Now, obviously, it decreases the stock because your stock might die because of hunger and because of thirst. And obviously, if you look at the droughts, can cause the crops, they basically die because they can't grow, not enough rainfall, and it decreases the production and profits. So that means less food are being produced. So what do a country need to do when this happens? Now, all of a sudden, if there's enough rainfall, what do? We take our products and we can sell it locally or we can sell it internationally. But now all of a sudden, if something like a drought happens, there's not enough food being produced, what do? We need to import, and that costs even more. Because if you look at the currency rate, much more expensive from other countries than in our own country. So it's much better to make it yourself. Now, you've learned in life orientation about HIV and AIDS. It has a massive negative impact on the health and productivity of farm workers, because once people are infected with HIV and AIDS, they're usually sick. That means people won't be able to come to work. And keep in mind, it means it's unproductive. You need these workers to make money. Now, another case scenario is HIV and AIDS. It costs the government more because it means more hospital bills. It costs more medical bills. So on the end of the day, it's non-profitable. And unfortunately, if people do not attend work because of sickness like HIV, it means the farm can't be productive. Now, price fluctuations, when the price goes ups and down, it makes it difficult for a farmer to stay in business and make a profit. So it depends. Sometimes the government look at it, sometimes it's actually cheaper to import crops from other countries than basically grow it yourself. So the price fluctuations, if the price goes down, it means the farmer can't make that much money of his product. So that's very important as well. And then lastly, pests can cause havoc with crops and stock. For currently, like for instance in 2017, South Africa had a massive outbreak of bird flu, and the ostrich business is a huge business in South Africa and adds a lot to the GDP of South Africa. Same with chickens. Now, of all of these, because of the bird flu, it can cause major damage to these farmers, and it can actually lead to the farm to close down. Now, when that farm closes down, it means a whole lot of people will be unemployed because of that. And once again, the farmer can't make any money, can't make profit, so the government also loses out because it's a formal business. Now, the importance of farming in South Africa. Most importantly, we benefit from it economically. It means we can provide food on the table. It means it improves our standard of living. It means we can pay for school fees, we can pay for medical bills, we can pay to provide our families with basic needs and services. But also, it's very important because it adds to the GDP. It makes that the government can provide us with services, provide us with decent infrastructure like roads, railway, and medical care. Now, if you look at the following factors, first of all, like I've mentioned, it benefits the economy of South Africa. Why? Because it provides jobs and it decreases unemployment. So that means less grants from the government. So that money can rather go to better services. Farming provides food to the country, so less food is needed to be imported. So obviously, like I've mentioned, it's better to produce it over here. First of all, you create employment, and second of all, we don't have to import food. That's probably going to be more expensive. As you can see, it's less expensive than imported food. Now, farming equipment is very expensive, and much of it is imported. But South Africa has reduced these costs by manufacturing some of the equipment. Now, exactly like I've mentioned, this is a chain reaction. Now, because of the farming taking place, people get inventive. Instead of spending huge amount of dollars overseas and buying products over here, we design and develop our own products. And by designing and developing our own products means we're creating more employment and obviously reducing the rate of importing goods at a higher cost. For instance, irrigation systems. Now, irrigation systems are used to water the crops or pasture lands. Now, farming involves moving crops to the markets, which in turn leads to improving the country's infrastructure. Like we've mentioned before, it's a formal sector, we pay tax for it. So the product, keep in mind, most of the products are perishable. So from the farm, the product needs to travel to the market where it's being sold. And eventually from there, it needs to be distributed to the consumers. So let's use cereals like we did in the last episode. What did the farmer do? For instance, cereals takes his product, send it to the market. Over there, it's being sold. Woolies trucks, Checkers trucks comes and transport it to all the different consumers over Southern Africa. And lastly, South African farming products are exported to other countries, earning us foreign exchange. Like I've mentioned, if you look at the exchange rate, you know, £1 equals 18 Rand. So that means you can sell his product for more over there than over here. And that means more money, it means it's more profitable. And when you're more profitable, you can extend your business even more. Now, the next topic we discussed in a previous lesson as well, when we look at food security, insecurity, and when we look at the concept earlier in this lesson, food security, when people have enough food, to be taken in more detail that your calorie intake is correct to have a healthy and sustainable lifestyle. Now, some of the factors why people have not enough food, and when people do not have enough food, we refer to it as food insecurity. It's because commercial farms are able to produce enough food due to favorable climate conditions. That's why we experience food security. Secondly, people can afford to buy the food. It means the prices are not too expensive, so we can afford to have our daily calorie intake and have a healthy lifestyle. The need to import food from other countries at a high cost is reduced. So it's pointless to import foods from other countries. We grow it locally, it's cheaper. And then in grade 9, you've learned about this term over here, genetically modified crops, GM crops. Now, this is very scientifically, what they do is they make plants adapt to harsher conditions. For instance, make plants grow in areas that's quite dry, or make plants grow in areas that make crops grow that's frost resistant. So basically what it helps, for instance, it's like antibiotics. It basically makes sure the plants don't catch any disease or pest or viruses. So it means nothing can hinder this process and we can produce more food. Now, like I've mentioned, food security, when you don't have enough food for your daily calorie intake and you can't have a productive life, especially affect poor people. Now, that's the reason why it's important, these economic activities, because we need to create employment opportunities so people can afford food, right? And unfortunately, many people in the rural areas are quite poor. These people try to survive, to grow their own food, like I've mentioned before, subsistence farming. Subsistence farming, they do a little bit of everything. It's just to go by, have a couple of cattle, grow their crops. So it's not by selling the product, but just for staying alive and provide for your own family. Now, subsistence farming, and there's the definition, this type of farming provides only enough to provide your own family with food. Now, there's some reasons why there's not enough food. Now, because of soil erosion, and it might be because of not enough fertile soil. That's a great concern. It means we can't plant the crops over there. It means it won't be able to grow. Climate change, it's a real thing. You've heard about global warming. You've learned about in grade 10, increasing temperatures. Now, with the increase in temperatures, what basically happens, some areas might experience more droughts and some areas might experience more floods. And that's a real concern. It means we can't be more productive by growing more crops. After the lesson, we will continue with factors that influence food insecurity.